We're back. So the claim. The claim, I think, is probably one of the most difficult parts about the patent that you can write. It's also one of the most important. The claim, when you go to the Google patent system, will be the part that gets reproduced in plain text. The claim, as well as the patent title, possibly the abstract, and the list of figures, but not the narrative, will all be written out as text that you can search using a search engine optimization in Google. So when you're Googling around for stuff, you're really Googling on claims, interestingly enough. I found some of my best patents by using Google Patent Search, and then I find the claims. They're there. So that's kind of an interesting problem. Each item in the claim is introduced using an indefinite article. I claim a widget that's able to repel asteroids in space. I claim a force field that keeps away jerks. This is a very important. I claim the anti-Cootie force field, which is extraordinarily important. Not that everybody has cooties, but why take a chance? So, in a sense, if you're running around, let's say in an airplane, and you hear, you're sitting next to a little kid with diaper issues and somebody else is sneezing, you'd like to turn on your Cootie force field to keep the cooties away. Because usually the kid with the diaper issues is also screaming. And typically it's inside of a cabin without good ventilation in an airplane ride that lasts 6 hours. And they're right next to you. And no one is going to want to change seats with you. So being able to put on, this is a compelling argument for active noise cancellation. Putting on your anti-Cootie force field, very important. So make sure you use the same name as you used in the spec. If anti-Cootie force field appears in one place, but just force field is in somewhere else, it sounds different. Is it a force field or is it an anti-Cootie force field? Let's see. It says use an indefinite article. A anti-Cootie force field. Right? Not the anti-Cootie, or a. And then afterwards you say the definite article, which is referring to the prior indefinite element. So I'm claiming an anti-Cootie force field. The said anti-Cootie force field is extraordinarily good at keeping away cooties. Or perhaps it's a vaccine, an anti-Cootie vaccine. And you could even claim the method by which the Cootie vaccine is administered. Circle dot, now you have a Cootie shot. Right? Only through this advanced technique can I obtain good Cootie protection. I've had several Cootie shots, so I know. Most of them were in the playground. I was young, so they last a lifetime. Although I should probably get a booster. Let's see now. Think of a unique name for each widget. You could probably have something like an adjective, like the red widget and the purple widget, or the high voltage cable and the Ultor cable, where the high voltage cable and the Ultor cable sound the same, but you've made them distinct by giving them different names. Ultor voltage may be somehow much higher than high voltage. High voltage might be 10 kilovolts, and Ultor voltage might be 1,000,000 volts. Big difference in cables. Let's see now. Avoid functional names. A means for avoiding cooties. I'm not trying to patent a means for avoiding cooties. I'm patenting a cootie shot. And said cootie shot will be good for life. Let me tell you, take an aside, the reason why it's so bad to have a patent system with a 6-year backlog is because pharmaceutical companies can't bring drugs to market in a timely fashion. Startup companies without patent protection can't get investment. They can't get investment to get drugs and bring them to market without having the patent. So in effect, having a patent issued on certain drugs is so important that you can't even start your business. You can't even get investment for the business. As a result, these delays in the patent office could be killing people. And you can't blame the Food and Drug Administration for that. That's all on the patent system. Primary claims are independent claims. Primary claims appear first, and dependent claims appear later. Usually one makes reference to the other. Let's see, what other claims can you have? An article of manufacture. If you can have an article of manufacture in your claim that you're claiming, and anybody who makes something like your thing infringes upon that article, then effectively you have a very good basis or foundation for suing on the alleged infringing product. So let's see. We've talked about patents on software. Those are method patents. Then there's patents on devices. Those are utility patents. You can also have a patent on a design. You can patent a building. Building designs could be patented. I could patent a technique for pouring concrete that allows me to make an egg-shaped building that doesn't crack. There are egg-shaped buildings in the Capitol, one of which is called the Egg. Others who have tried to pour eggs in Europe, those eggs have cracked because they didn't have enough concrete all lined up all at once, and so they had seams. They didn't have enough cement trucks. So you could patent the technique for pouring the concrete for the building. That's kind of an interesting idea. You could certainly patent a smart energy monitoring device, or you could patent a new way to do RFID tags, or maybe you could patent your Witricity Arduino shield so that people can have smart biosensors without direct coupling to the AC power, and thus improved safety. That's a great patent. You could patent that. And you could even base it on the existing Witricity patents, but you've got a different application. One they may not have thought of. One they may not have claimed. If a independent claim is disallowed by the Patent Office, all dependent claims that follow are also disallowed. But you can disallow a dependent claim, and the independent claim and the other dependent claims might still be allowed. So the number of claims that will be allowed in your patent is never known until the patent is issued. And the cost of your patent is now a function of the number of claims. So if claims are disallowed, your patent could become cheaper. It used to be the case that you got patent costs independent of the number of claims. Now, after a certain number, they charge you for each additional claim. They will not charge you extra if your patent narrative is long. That they won't charge you for. They won't charge you extra if your title is long. That they won't charge you for. One technique that people use to hide their patents in the patent system is they make the title of the patent sound irrelevant or generic. And people who find them with a search don't bother to read them. So you can just say, a device for a camera. That's all you have to say. It could be a light meter. It could be a rangefinder. You don't have to tell them. So in a sense, you can make the patent, I mean, this is not necessarily playing it straight, but you can game the patent system. It's kind of interesting. There are other ways to game the patent system too. It's subtle. Huh? You can make the title as short as you like, as long as it's unique. You know, a new method for printing. Printing what? Paper? Silicon wafers? Who knows? So no one would necessarily find it just from the title. Let's see now. A signal. A signal does not fall into any of the 4 statutory categories. It's not a process. It's not a machine. It's not a composition of matter. And it's not a way of manufacture. I cannot patent a signal. But I can patent a signal processing algorithm. One of the early, this is before software patents were allowed, one of the early signal processing algorithms is called the Hartley transform. That was patented by Bracewell in the 60s. But what he did was he patented a device that embodied the algorithm. So if you are able to take the algorithm and convert it into a device, that you can patent at the time. Now you can just patent algorithms. So algorithms for signal processing you can patent. There was one lawyer who came to present after the Bilski ruling, which was a Supreme Court ruling, and he said, well, if it fits in your head and can be easily imagined, then it is no longer patentable, which is something some people had a lot of problem with. And I pointed out, well, look, if you have the ability to do face recognition, and most people do, that's something that fits easily in your head. But if I have a new algorithm for doing face recognition, that's patentable. And he agreed. So if you can say a face is an image, but an image is really a two-dimensional signal, the algorithm for recognizing that image and identifying it, if it works better, let's say, than somebody else's, might have great commercial value and should be patentable. So then, if you said to me, okay, a face recognition algorithm is patentable, what's the statutory category? Is it a machine for doing face recognition? Sure. Because if you're patenting the system, it's a computer with a camera, right? And maybe and a way of alerting an operator or sending an email. Is it a process? Yeah, why not? Because there's a process involved in reading in an image and then identifying the face and then figuring out which mode of, let's say, notifying somebody you should use. Maybe it isn't a manufacturing process, maybe no matter is involved. But it still falls underneath at least one of the statutory categories. Suppose you said to me, well, I'm going to do a face recognition algorithm, which is fairly well known, but I'm going to implement it using NVIDIA Tesla cards that have 450 megaflops of power so that you can do face recognition in a brute force fashion. So it's a parallel face recognition algorithm that works well with general purpose graphics programming units. That you can patent. And from a statutory category point of view, it really focuses more on the machine. The fact that you can take the process and divide it up is not particularly interesting. What's really interesting is this whole system that lets you do it much faster than anybody else because of the brute force behind it. So I say the category there feels more like machine than process. But maybe it's got both in it. Let's see what else. A method operating on an unsorted list stored in a computer memory. So what could this be? A sorting algorithm, right? How do I patent a sorting algorithm? Just say it's an indefinite article, a method that does data processing of some kind. And then you can later use the definite article and say said method does this, that, and the other thing. Then when you do a dependent claim, you can say said method in claim 1, and then it could be used for not just sorting, let's say, people in class, but it could be used for sorting textbooks, or it could be used for whatever. Make it as broad as you can. A method operating on a digital computer having a disk. Sounds very device-oriented, but it's really about the method and the system. Let's see now. Include those steps necessary to distinguish the claimed invention from prior art. It's a claim, not an algorithm. So what you'd like to do is identify prior art and say, it's just like the Kodak method, but it doesn't use hardware, it uses software, it has a different algorithm, it does something a little different. Displaying. Indicate what's being acted on. Name the result. Let's see. Data processing in general acts on data. So what's being acted on, let's say, is the signal. The result of the signal is something is identified, something is counted. Let's say you've got a new machine that can count change. So it looks at the coins, that's the input. So the input is an image, and the output is how much money you have. The coin counting mechanism. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify what will infringe upon your patent. It's not a description of the invention. That came already. That came as part of the abstract and the narrative. So you've already described the invention. What you're trying to do with the claims is lay out the intellectual property coverage as broadly as you possibly can, and still have the claim allowed. If it's too broad, the patent examiner will disallow it with an office action. I hate getting office actions. It means more work for me. If you don't have enough time to deal with the office action, you can file to get an extension. If you ignore the office action, the patent becomes abandoned. If you abandon the patent, you can try and plea extenuating circumstances to get the patent readmitted. But in general, once you've abandoned the patent, it's done. I once had a patent on an algorithm that I filed myself. It was for nth order Markov processes using Petri nets. And the patent office gave me an office action and they said, it's obvious. I said, but look, it's in a journal, and it was a peer-reviewed article, and it was hard. There was nothing about this. I felt like I really needed a PhD to develop this algorithm. And there was nothing about it that felt, it's obvious. I said, wow, those guys in the patent office, they must be geniuses. Well, sure enough, Albert Einstein worked in the patent office. So some of them really are geniuses. But I don't think this guy was a genius. Who knows? So I lost that patent. It went belly up because I refused to respond to the office action. I didn't know what to do. How can I prove that it's not obvious, I wrote back. They said, check with a patent attorney. I said, what's the acid test for obviousness? They couldn't tell me, but they knew it was obvious. Well, as it turns out, Amazon got one click as a patent. That's a business method patent. So if you click just once, it's allowed. That's a patent. And that's not considered obvious. So if the stupid one-click patent is not obvious, how is nth order Markov processes with stochastic Petri nets supposed to be obvious? I don't get that, right? Patent Office does its own thing. So let's think about how I would detect infringement. This is a big problem, okay? Suppose I, as an inventor, decided to patent an algorithm. How do I know that this invention that I saw has my algorithm in it? How would I detect it? How would I enforce my patent? How could I find out what the code looks like inside of a microprocessor that has embedded firmware? How would I know that? This is a big problem. If you can't detect that your patent has been infringed upon, your patent is worthless. So I will present for you a patent idea which I think is patentable, which I think might be obvious, but maybe isn't, but probably can't be enforced. In which case, worthless. Worthless. If you said to me, well, I have a force field and it works, and I'm going to patent anyone who does anything with magnetic force fields, wow, maybe I could detect that. So what would the claim look like? Anyone who builds a force field based on magnetism. That's a basic method patent. If they allow that patent, boy, that's a good patent. Of course, if you can't implement a practical force field, and it takes 20 years before anybody can have one, by the time they get it, your patent will be in the public domain, in which case you're too far ahead of your time. In the world of patents, being too far ahead of your time is indistinguishable from being wrong. Because you'll never make a dime from an idea that can't be implemented in the life of the patent. There was one guy who had a really simple idea, the delay wiper. He was a non-practicing entity, what some people call the patent troll. You turn on the wiper, it runs the wiper and then waits for a few seconds and then runs again. The delay wiper. He built a business based on suing car companies. He went to Ford, got $14 million. That set a precedent. He took that money, paid his lawyers, kept a little for himself, then went out and went after GM. And he went after all the other car companies, and soon they had to pay because they got actual notice and they were going to be subject to triple damages. Patent trolls can issue offensive suits against huge companies like Google or Microsoft. And you say, how can I sue Microsoft? They have more lawyers than the Department of Justice. They will settle rather than having to go to court because it will be cheaper. Especially if you If you say, okay, Microsoft, if you settle, you'll only have to pay me $1. They say, oh, okay, here's the $1. We don't have to go to court. Then you can tell everybody, Microsoft settled. You pay. Now you can go after people who you actually can sue. Because Microsoft settled. And if they settled, then this patent must be valid. It's a funny game, this intellectual property business. You know, but it's interesting in this sense that it allows you to build what the entrepreneurs call a sustainable competitive advantage. Sustainable competitive advantage means you have the ability to charge whatever it is you want to because nobody else can make this. That sustainable competitive advantage could be an economic barrier to entry. I'll be the only car company in the world. I'll charge whatever I want to for cars. I have a monopoly. That means you could start a car company, but maybe you can't afford to start a car company. Well, if you can't afford to start a car company, then there is an economic barrier to entry, and I have a sustainable competitive advantage. You know, if I told you there's only 3 car companies in the United States, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, and that's it, and I don't count Tesla, right, because they're little. They will be crushed like the cockroaches they are just as soon as GM gets into the electric car company business. So, and they have, right? So now you can buy a Chevy Volt. So the Tesla costs $90,000. Chevy Volt costs what, $40,000? Like half the cost. Of course, they're not selling very many of them, but so this is one of those things where sustainable competitive advantage, that's like the moat that keeps other people out of your fortress, out of your castle, out of your business. That's what a patent can give you. Sustainable competitive advantage means if you have a patent in the United States and in Canada and in the 17 member nations of the Paris Convention Treaty and in Japan, then anybody, anywhere, who does anything related to your patent that infringes pays you money. Then you have a very compelling licensing model. You don't even have to manufacture. You can just run around suing people. If your invention is so useful that people will want to use it. In the one case, I remember this one fellow, Sadiq Ferris and Revio at Elmsford, had a patent on 3D technology for movies. Nobody was making 3D movies for 20 years. 20 years later, the patent went into the public domain, and now 3D movies are all over the place. So sometimes these inventions are not critical, even though they can be extremely commercial. Being too early is indistinguishable from being wrong, because Sadiq Ferris never made a dime from that patent. It just went into the public domain. There was a time when I held a lot of Apple stock, and it went down and I just sold it. Being too early is indistinguishable from being wrong in the world of investing as well. A method, there's the indefinite article. Electronic mail. Ooh, where have I seen that before? One of a plurality of originating processors in an electronic mail system to at least one of a plurality of destination processes in an electronic mail system. This sounds like your patent. This claim has your name written all over it. Transmitting the originating information originating from one of a plurality of originating processors to a gateway switch within the electronic mail system. This is just so... Who writes like that? Does that even sound like English? A plurality of originating processors. I think they mean a bunch. Transmitting originated information from the gateway switch to an interface. Transmitting the originated information received from the gateway switch from the interface. This is broadening the claim. All the different possible embodiments. Using RF, using wires. This business at the end. The originated information is transmitted to the interface switch by the gateway switch in response to an address of the interface switch which has been added to the originated information at the one of the plurality of originating processors or by the electronic mail system, and the originated information is transmitted from... What is missing here is punctuation. This is the biggest stinking run-on sentence I ever saw. And yet, it's a real claim. In other words, claims are grammatically incorrect. And that's okay. They don't seem to care. Why you would do that is not clear to me. Do you think it would invalidate the claim if you started a new sentence? Maybe. But it turns out every one of these paragraphs, it looks like, is just one sentence. If you can call it that. It's a run-on sentence, but it is. Look at this. A patent system claim. It's really bizarre that people should want to write like this. I don't really know how I would enforce that claim. How would you detect if somebody had infringed upon this claim? Instead of a method comprising step A, step B, step C, and step D, consider using a method using the results of step A, step B, and step C, comprising step D. Is that better? If arguably only step D needs to be performed in the United States, but steps A, B, and C help distinguish the claim over prior art, maybe it's better. I don't know. I need an example. Let's think of an example where this might be true. A method comprising digitizing an image, doing low-level processing on the image, identifying the faces in the image. Well, let's say isolating. Let's say step C is isolating the faces. So step A, we digitize the image. Step B, we equalize the image. Step C, we extract the faces. Step D, we identify the faces. Maybe what we really need is a method using the results of inputting an image, equalizing the image, and identifying the faces. Extracting the faces in order to finally identify the faces. And really the only thing I care about is identifying the faces, and the other stuff, inputting the image, that equalization, the other stuff, trivial engineering. That I don't claim. So the one step, identifying the images, the faces after they've been extracted from the image, that's the important algorithm. And face identification is more important than, let's say, face extraction. Face finding, we'll call it. Oh, and you can file online. It's all electronic. You can use a word processor. It should be done by an attorney if the invention is assigned to a company. That assumes the company actually has the resources to do it. If you're the only owner of the company, then you're a sole entrepreneur, you may end up filing yourself. I know, because I have. You have to have a docketing system to make sure the application is not lost. What does that mean? Well, what I do is I file a registered receipt. In fact, what you can do, and it's very inexpensive, is when you send the patent in, if you're sending in paper, you get a return receipt. So return receipt requested is pasted on top of the envelope. They have to sign for it, and then you get it back, and that proves they've received it. So that's proof positive the Patent Office has the thing. The question exactly of what you do with it is another matter. Hopefully you file it in a way that's findable. But it proves that they got your provisional patent application. So here's my idea. The linearize have it. Linearize is a double entendre, has two meanings. Means to linearize something, but it's also a photocell, so it's really an electric eye. Light-dependent resistors detect light intensity, but the intensity is not linear. It's logarithmic. Eastman Kodak has a patent from 1995 which shows that light is linear as the log of the light intensity. And they use a bank of resistors that they switch in order to get the light-dependent resistors to run in a linear mode. This is their patent. That gives them what they call a constant current control circuit. Well, I want to take a light-dependent resistor and hook it up to my little Arduino and move my hand and have the tone changed. So instead of putting in a resistor bank, I'll just use a high dynamic range A to D converter, and then I'll take a log of the voltage that comes out of the A to D converter, and then I'll use that, because I know the LDR is linear as the log of intensity. So I'll just take the log of the LDR, and then I'll use that to make my A to D converter linear in its quantization, but my software, let's say, logarithmic in its response. That improves my sensitivity. So I'll use the log function in software. So my patent idea is just like the Kodak idea of using a resistor bank, only my idea is use a big bandwidth A to D converter, maybe 10 bits worth of A to D converter is enough instead of 8, and then just do it all in software, or use a lookup table. Is it obvious? Maybe, but I claim that it's just different enough to be patentable. Plus, in 2 years, the Kodak patent, right, because 1995, by 2015, it'll be 20 years, it'll be in the public domain. And it'll take at least 2 years for my patent to issue anyway. So while my patent might read on the Kodak patent, I don't have to worry because they're going into the public domain anyway. And my patent will be an improvement patent because everybody will want to use my algorithm instead of the Kodak algorithm, because the Kodak algorithm requires extra resistors and my algorithm just needs a log function or a lookup table. Is it a method or is it a device? You can treat it as either. If it's a light metering device with adjustable output, you can write it up that way. Or you can say it's an algorithm. It's a method for the linearization of a light sensing element. And what is the application? Is it a musical instrument or is it for a camera? Well, it can be either, and you should claim both. So it's a light metering device which has a light-dependent resistor, has a light-sensing element, a network of plurality of circuit elements, an A to D converter for connecting the light-dependent resistor to a computing element, linearization software, the software inputs a voltage, right? We can't patent a signal, but we can patent the process that the signal undergoes, measures output terminal at the light-dependent resistor, and linearizes the measurement. So what do you need it for? I need to know this, right? What's the application? The problem has to be important. So light metering devices can be used in cameras or computer-human interfaces. The apparatus and method for monitoring radiant energy, signals with variable signal gain and resolution enhancement, could be the way in which you term the device. And so to write the first independent claim, I might say, here's a light metering device comprising light-dependent resistor, network of stuff, A/D converter, computer, software, linearizes the thingy. Then comes the dependent claim. A light metering device like claim 1 with a light-dependent resistor is a cadmium sulfide cell. Or maybe it's a light metering device just like claim 1 but instead we use a sulfoseleneid cell. Or maybe it's a light metering device, just like Claim 1, or we do cadmium selenide cell. You could go on and on like that. If they disallow Claim 1, you're sunk. Right? But they could disallow any of the dependent claims, and you'd still have a patent. Do I need the code? No, not really. But I do need at least a flow chart or some algorithm. But the code might help. You can put the code in there. Maybe the codec device had 8 bits, but I can get around it by using an Arduino, which has 10 bits. That's an extra 24 dB of headroom in dynamic range. So now all I need is a log function. And it's just like the prior art, but with a difference. And the difference is we do it all in software. And take advantage of the extra bits, a dynamic range. The Arduino takes a while to compute, but it computes much faster than I can move my hand when I'm waving my hand around. So that's fine. And maybe you could just throw in the software and say this is how we do it. And you don't have to do the specifics like how you characterize the cell itself, because you've got all these different cells you could use. But you could just generally say, look, we take 10 times the log of the bit of the 10-bit quantization value, and we get the value in dB, and we use that instead. That might be equivalent to doing a lookup table. And so that's sort of what I'm thinking is going to be your next homework assignment. Write the provisional patent up. Do you want to keep it now? So keep, discard, keep, discard. No, keep. Too late. Right. So for Axiom Mentor, in readings, I think we should make it a PowerPoint. So a PowerPoint presentation, you've done the patent search, you've presented the idea, now let's present the patent. So what we'll do is we'll create a new homework assignment. Let's see now, create new assignment. What shall we call it? Assignment 4. It's a homework. It's title. Maybe what we'll say is provisional patent application. Wait 1. Groups are not assigned. Save and edit. Due date next week. Estimated time to complete 1.5 hours. Due at 2 p.m. No, 12 p.m. Is it 12 a.m. or 12 p.m.? p.m. I think. Submit online. I don't need URLs. You can show the grade assignment, grade distribution, and your goal. Write a provisional patent application draft consisting of 1. A title, 2. A summary, or let's say abstract, of the invention. This is the stuff that you're going to essentially patent. 3. Prior art, patent numbers and titles for claim or claims. Put this in a PowerPoint to present to the class for next week. And you might do the whole thing in 4 slides. I mean, it wouldn't bother me if you did it in 1 slide, but I think it would be too cluttered. So I'll use your judgment. If you need more than 4 slides, that's okay. You know, you don't have to write 10, 20 claims, but you should have at least 1. And you don't have to write all independent claims, and you don't have to write dependent claims, but you should have at least 1 independent claim. You will need at least 1 independent claim. I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, we're basically on one.
And this is, yeah, this is based on your idea.
Oh.
This is your provisional patent application. I already showed you what I started to write for my thing, but you don't want to write my thing. Hopefully not. Your thing will be about your thing.
Right.
Magnetic levitation of obstructions that are going to hit me before the cootie shield, right? Whatever that is. Or your Witricity patent for Arduino thingies. Or it's not Niobium motor thingies? How about Niobium motors in space? I even like the way that sounds. Niobium motors in space. Then you can have superconducting magnets that make the motors run really efficiently because they're in space, because it's cold there. And superconducting magnets don't have to be... I'll bet you Ryan doesn't have that. You could even get a NASA space grant for it. Then you could be a research assistant that's funded. Huh? NASA space grants are available, you know. Oh, that's a good one for you, George. Yeah, NASA space grant. Because your thing is in... It's cootie shields in space. I'm liking this, right? You've got... Yeah, I think NASA should fund it. I mean, you've got force fields and you're keeping astronauts safe. I'm really liking this. This is good stuff. It's like rocket science. So, yeah, I guess we all understand what we're going to do. Thank you. I went over a little bit. The assignment will be hidden. Why? Private, no assessment access. No, why is the assignment hidden? Oh, on. That should be like a default. Yeah, why would you make an assignment that's hidden? Why? That's not like a reasonable default. Alright, so let's do this. Shall we try and do peer review? Does anybody know how that works in Mentor? No? Let's find out. Yes. If it doesn't work, we won't do it. It'll be my very first peer review. I'm a peer review virgin. I don't know about such things. Save. Where is it? Oh, provisional patent application. I don't like the names. Why is this homework 1? It's like all out of order. I guess we know which one is first based on due date. The PowerPoint presentation, that's done, right? So the date apparently was never set, but it must have been like then. Maybe by putting in the dates, it'll help us identify, right? Because at least it's clear this came before that, and this came after. I don't know why this homework 1 is up on the top like that, but there it is. provisional patent application due next week. And you're not writing the full application, right? No narrative, right? It's just a title and a little abstract, which, by the way, could be like a few lines on your PowerPoint. I don't know how many slides you'll need for your claims. It's going to be up to you. Okay? All right. Thanks very much.